And on today's show, we're highlighting the practices of Michael Kitces and Dick Austin. Part 5 of this week's series featuring retirement income masters with top of the table and MDRT platform speaker, Tom Hagman. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician in Innsmouth. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to day 5, Tommy.
Thank you, Steve.
And now, I'm sorry, this next one, if you have just coming in, we've been talking all this week. Tom has collected 14 of the top players in retirement income. This is a huge idea for you to read this because I think you're going to gain so much from different approaches. There's going to be some say, oh, I knew that, but there's going to be things in here you didn't know. And I think it's really great. We're talking to Tom because he's a top of the table MDRT platform speaker. He's met all these guys, interviewed these people, but I have to tell you, this next one we're going to talk about, I think it's somewhat controversial. Michael Kitces, since when is he one of our guys? I mean, this is a little odd because he's usually not as embracing of the guaranteed income annuities and things of that nature.
Well, Michael may be the smartest guy in the book. I mean, honestly, he's a very smart guy. He's known in the financial planning community as one of the real, gurus.
He's got a cult following.
Oh yeah, he's got a following. He's got his blog, Nerd's Eye View and all this stuff. So he's got a great following. He and I banter back and forth in this chapter because I'm a big believer you should cover your basic expense with guaranteed lifetime income. He's still a big believer that you can have a safe withdrawal rate. That you can have a diversified portfolio and that you can just withdraw money and you're going to be just fine.
Now, let's just make the distinction here because you brought him in. Why would you? I know you're kind of being a very, very good guy here. You're giving a completely second opinion, but more than that, a completely almost, not always, but almost opposite opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Michael and I have opposite opinions. We have differing points of view, and we're willing to look at each other's points of view. And I think now Michael has met with Curtis, as a matter of fact, and I think he's understanding some of the deferred income annuities and maybe some even the lifetime income that can work. But I do want to say Michael has written a white paper that is very powerful. And it's titled, "If Immediate Annuities Are Such a Great Solution, Why Doesn't Anyone Want to Buy One?" And in there, he kind of does some of his arguments, and he's positioned some other investments that academically, at least, you can retire successfully without using a lifetime income annuity. And I say academically because I don't believe some of that stuff works in the real world. Although I will say this, I believe Michael could make this stuff work in the real world. I do believe he is that technically proficient that he can do this stuff, but I don't think the masses of advisors can do it. I just don't think so. I said, Michael, why wouldn't you want to cover their basic expenses with guaranteed income and then optimize the rest of the portfolio? Do all your financial planning stuff over here. And he said, well, my clients don't think in covering basic expenses and optimizing the rest of the portfolio. They want one number. And I said, well, you could give them one number, but behind the scenes, you could cover their basic expenses. He just, I think he thinks he can do better than a lifetime income annuity. And I say in the first book, Paychecks and Playchecks, you can do better. Sure. It's just math and science says you will likely do worse. If 100 advisors do it, it would not probably look pretty.
And I think one of the big issues is the psychological profile of a security portfolio, as you suggest, 80%. I mean, that's a chunk of change. We're talking about a large portfolio. I don't think most people have that kind of psychological profile at that age.
So this paper says that, when you're younger, you do a portfolio, both stocks and bonds. And in the first years of retirement, you're taking more out of the bonds because it's more guaranteed, and that's your guaranteed income. That gives the stock market a chance to go up and down, but over time it's always gone up. And so that as you get older, you should have more and more of your money in the stock market. Academically, I think that maybe works. In the real world, can you imagine if we had a 85-year-old lady and she's got 70 or 80% of her money in stocks and the market goes down? I can't even imagine what could happen to advisors in a situation like this. So I think there's a difference between the academic world and the real world, and I've got both my feet in the real world.
Okay, and you're saying he's already had some conversations with Curtis Cloak, and we talked about him earlier in the week, and of course we've had him on. If you missed the series, watch it, it's just great. So he's kind of getting another viewpoint from a more academic person, and I'm wondering, did he have any kind of maybe change of heart?
I don't want to put words in either one of their mouths, but I think he finds it very interesting. I would say, I can say that safely. Now, one of the things I said with Michael, I said, these Monte Carlo simulations, a lot of them use age 90. Well, age 90 can fail 63% of the time now, according to that Financial Research Corporation study. So I said, what would happen to your theories if people live to be 120 or 150 years of age? And he said the odds of that happening are very small, that the reason people are living longer is because of increased infant or reduced infant mortality, not because really people are living longer. Well,
yeah, I don't think the actual science would support that conclusion. But let's go one more thing that he talks about. He talks about this importance, I do like this part, of framing the argument, or actually framing the discussion. And I like that because it kind of sets up the idea of how do you frame a lot of people come in and they're winging it, as you said before, other advisors. No, we're coming in, we're framing it. We have a defined boundary in our discussion, so we're going to frame it. Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a good, unique idea.
I think it's how you frame this discussion of guaranteed retirement income. He has an example in here of Social Security, and he said, what if I proposed an income solution where every paycheck during your working years, we're going to take a portion of your income. We're going to allocate it directly to a future retirement annuity. You can't touch that annuity when it's paid or at any point thereafter. Even if you desperately need it for a dire emergency, your retirement contribution to the future annuity is mandatory, and it will be a non-trivial portion of your paycheck, like 6%. You can only start the annuity payments when the annuity company says you have reached a reasonable retirement age. If you're married, the annuity payments will be made on a survivorship basis, but if you pass away without a spouse, there's no remainder made to your family. If you're single, you can save, and you will save because it's mandatory in this retirement annuity for 40 years. But if you pass away right before retirement, all the money is gone and you can't bequeath any of it. The annuity company keeps it. How popular would that be? It wouldn't be very popular. That's Social Security. And he says it's all in the framing. So he frames, and so anyway, it was probably one of the most interesting chapters of the book.
Well, that's the old adage, he who frames the argument wins. When we come back, we're going to talk about Dick Austin, 40-year veteran in our business. You're going to be really enjoying this next segment. We'll be right back after the break. Back in the day, life insurance professionals were called field underwriters. Then, carriers trained their field force in the basics of life insurance underwriting. Today, the insurance industry doesn't educate the agent population as they once did. But now you can have the Informed Risk Guide at your fingertips so you can illustrate a reasonable rate class for your life insurance prospects. Just request your copy of the Informed Risk Guide at downtobusiness.ashbrokerage.com. It's free from Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company. Well, welcome back to our second segment with Tom Hagna, top of the table MDRT platform speaker and author of Retirement Income Masters, The Secrets of the Pros. We're talking about a pro, Dick Austin, 40-year vet. I mean, that supersedes my time in the business.
Yeah. And he's been an advocate of guaranteed lifetime income for over 35 years. In fact, back in the 90s, some people kind of thought he was cuckoo because the market was going up 20% a year, and he kept saying, you need some guaranteed lifetime income, you need some guaranteed lifetime income. So he's been a consistent retirement income advocate for over 35 years.
When I think about him, and not only has he been one of our patriarchs of our business, but he understands the risks in retirement. And I think sometimes people who pontificate, like we were talking in the first segment, they say, well, I can do better this way and that, but we don't anticipate the risks of retirement.
And there are real risks. There's market risk, which the markets can go up and down. If you have all your money in the market and it collapses right before you retire, you're going to have a suboptimal retirement. There's inflation risk, the silent thief that over time can decimate a portfolio. So you not only need to have income for a long time, you need to have increasing income for a long time, and then longevity risk, the number one risk in retirement, because it's not just a risk, it's a risk multiplier. See, I don't think people understand that, living a long life, it's a great thing. We all want to live a long life, right? But the longer you live, the more likely the market will crash. The longer you live, the more likely we'll see inflation. The longer you live, the more likely you'll need long-term care. So what all the research I can find on the subject of retirement says, if you're going to retire successfully, you must take longevity risk off the table. Stocks can't do that. Bonds can't do that. Managed money can't do that. Only some form of an annuity can do it, and Dick knows that.
We'll talk a little bit about Dick's $1 million example in the chapter. I thought that was kind of nice.
Well, he just starts out with a simple example, and you've seen this. You start out with $1 million, and if you put 50% in stocks and 50% in bonds, and you take out $50,000 a year, the odds are you're going to run out of money. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think, well, the stock market's averaged 10 to 12% a year since 1926, so why can't I take out 5? Well, you can't, because of the order of returns and the sequence of returns. And that if the market goes down for the first 3 years of your retirement, you'll never climb out of that death spiral. And so that's kind of that $1 million example.
I think consumers go, $1 million, that should work. Yeah. I know it sounds heretical though, but it should work.
But $1 million in a 1% interest rate environment is $10,000 a year.
Right.
See, people think they're a millionaire if they have $1 million. That's $10,000 a year. Even if it was 3%, it's $30,000 a year. So $1 million is not a lot of money to retire on. It's just not. In today's world. But another thing that Dick does very well, he talks about asset allocation and product allocation. How many times do we talk about asset allocation and product allocation? But he talks about it in the book, and I find that a very interesting part.
Well, one of my favorite things is this is a huge story. I love this allegory. Tell us about the desert story, because I'm sorry, that to me is a huge allegory, and I love it.
So I think this is one of the best stories in the whole book. Dick tells a story of a family from Boston that had never been to the desert before. They'd never seen sand dunes or a cactus or a coyote, but they wanted to. So they booked a family vacation to Death Valley, California, and they're going to go through Death Valley, through Nevada, into Arizona. And they booked it for the middle of July. Well, when they landed, it was 127 degrees. Now, 127 degrees, it's hot, hot, hot. You can literally fry eggs on the pavement. It's so hot. But it was okay. They had a big old Lincoln Continental with ice-cold air conditioning. So they get in the Lincoln Continental and they start their drive. And at first, it was sand dunes that went on and on and on. They'd never seen so much sand. And then it was cactus after cactus after cactus. There's lizards. There's a tarantula. There's a coyote. There's a rattlesnake eating a rabbit. They never had this time. They were having the time of their lives. But as the day went long, somebody noticed the gas tank was almost on E, and the next town was 100 miles away. Well, now panic sets in. The air conditioner comes off. The windows come down. They start sweating. They start fighting and arguing. How could you be so dumb not to fill the tank before we go across Death Valley? Hey, how fast should we drive? The guy in the back seat said, I don't know, looks pretty flat. I'd probably speed her up to 100, 110. We could probably coast for 5-6 miles. The other guy says, no, you moron, you got to slow that thing down to 30. We got to save fuel. The lady in the car said, I read a report once. It's 52.4 miles per hour is the optimal speed to drive across the desert. But here's what they were doing. They were fighting. They were arguing. They're miserable. And all their eyes were on the gas gauge as it went down, down, down. And they knew they were going to run out. They just didn't know when. And he says, that's why you need a lifetime income annuity. See, he says, everybody thinks running out of money is about the day you run out of money. He said, that's not true. It's all those years in retirement when you know you're going to run out, and you're fighting, and you're arguing, and you're miserable, and all your eyes are on the gas gauge, the bank account, as it goes down, 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 and you know you're going to run out. You just don't. He said, having a lifetime income annuity is like having a quarter tank of gas, guaranteed all the way across town.
That's one of Dick Austin's classic stories. You can find it in the book, Retirement Income Masters, The Secrets of the Pros. With Tommy Hagner, just go out to his site, tommyhagner.com, or you can pick it up on amazon.com. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance officer. Missed an episode? Just hop out to downtobusiness.ashbrokerage.com and head for our archives. And remember, you could be wiser as an Ash Brokerage advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you next week.